This episode is brought to you by the American Homebrewers Association, a community of more than 40,000 fermentation enthusiasts from around the world. Visit homebrewersassociation.org for recipes, brewing tips, and conversation. That's homebrewersassociation.org. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, July 16th, 2020. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Marcus Baskerville of Weathered Souls Brewing in San Antonio talks about Black is Beautiful, the Imperial Stout that's sweeping the craft beer world and the social initiative associated with it. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows. And if you go to basicbrewingshop.com, you can find our DVDs, our brewer's logbooks, and other Basic Brewing gear. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook as well. We have a cool Basic Brewing app on iTunes and Amazon.com, and we're found all over the place where fine podcasts are served up. Get choked up just talking about it. And if you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. And thanks to everybody who's helping out, especially during these times. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. And Steve Wilkes and I are planning to get together this week to record the next Hop Sampler audio show. This one featuring a blend of hops for the first time, blending two hops together. One of the batches has Galaxy alone, another has Centennial, and a third has a blend of the two, half and half. Will we be able to tell those batches apart? Will one hop overpower the other in the blend? Or will there be a delicious synergy? We'll see. We're also planning on shooting 2 video episodes, and financial supporters will get early releases of those, along with recipes and behind-the-scenes expanded footage. We'll be featuring a triple that I've fermented with Napoleon from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Organic Yeast, which I believe is a Saison yeast, so I'm not sure what to call that one other than delicious. We'll also sample my version of the Black is Beautiful Imperial Stout that I chose to ferment with a darkness from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Organic Yeast. Apparently, so I hear, that yeast, the darkness, is from a certain Irish brewery. The original recipe called for California ale yeast, but Steve and I thought we'd just change gears. We can't leave things alone. And I'm really happy with the way both of those beers turned out, that sort of triple Saison and the Imperial Stout. We love Imperial Organic Yeast. They're the only organic yeast producer with the highest pitch rate of any liquid yeast, 200 billion cells per easy open pouch. I like to say that my stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches. For the triple, its starting gravity was 1068, but that single pouch of Napoleon, without a starter, took that beer down to a deliciously dry 1004 with no problem at all. And for the Imperial Stout, it started off at 1080. And I was just going to pitch a single pouch of darkness in there by itself, but Steve reached into the back of the yeast fridge and found another pouch at his shop, stevesbrewshop.com, of Napoleon, another pouch of Napoleon that had just gone past its 4-month shelf life. Think about that. Imperial has a 4-month shelf life on their yeast. So Steve donated that to the cause. Again, the fermentation went great on that beer. I hit the final gravity of 1016, and both beers, again, are delicious. And there's news for Kvike fans out there. If you're a fan of Kvike yeast, be sure to look for A37 Pog from Imperial, which is said to give you delicious tropical fruit flavors when fermented at temperatures up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Check all that out at imperialyeast.com, and be sure to ask your local homebrew shop for Imperial Organic Yeast. And I have to I have to brag and talk about the brewing process for my version of the Black is Beautiful Imperial Stout. Annie Johnson's homebrew recipe, past Homebrewer of the Year, Annie Johnson's homebrew recipe, which you can find on the AHA website. It calls for 16 pounds of grain for this 5-gallon batch. It's got pale malt, flaked oats and barley, other specialty grains. We'll get the details of that in the conversation with Marcus. That's a lot of grain. But my 240-volt Warthog brew-in-a-bag system from our friends and sponsors Desiree and Dave from High Gravity in Tulsa handled it with no problem. I started off with 9 gallons of strike water instead of my usual 8 because of the amount of grain. And with the brew-in-a-bag configuration, I was able to stir the mash periodically, which I love, and the Warthog controller held the mash rock solid at 154 degrees Fahrenheit, or 68 C, for the full rest, which was a little over an hour. And then I switched over to the boil mode on the controller and boiled at around 85% power for a total of 90 minutes. And using that strategy, I was able to hit my gravity targets. You know, HighGravityBrew.com takes the pain out of propane. From 5 gallons to 2 barrels and from single to 3 vessel systems, HighGravityBrew.com has the system that will fit your wants and needs, including High Gravity's Warthog line and systems from other manufacturers too. And if you use the code EBC75BB, you can save $75 off your electric brewing purchase. Check it all out at family-owned and operated HighGravityBrew.com. Oh, and before I forget, Desiree says that if you live in the Tulsa area and don't feel comfortable in going into the store, they still have curbside pickup. So you can order online and then drive by the store and give them a call, and they'll bring your order out to you, which is handy. And once you're at High Gravity, check out Pippin's Tap Room there, where they have their version of the Black is Beautiful Imperial Stout. Okay, if your social media feed is like mine, this Black is Beautiful Imperial Stout is popping up all over the place. To find out what it's all about, I decided to go straight to the source, Marcus Baskerville of Weathered Souls. We were talking over a Skype connection that started out a little hard to hear, but stick with it, it gets better. Marcus Baskerville, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
How are you doing this morning?
Pretty good. I'm really pleased that I've got some of your time, because it seems to me that you're probably one of the busier people in brewing nowadays with this project.
We've been pretty busy. I don't know about one of the busier, but it's definitely been keeping our attention lately.
Well, first of all, let's get to know you. How did you get involved in brewing, and how did you come to co-found Weathered Souls?
Yeah, so I got into brewing actually through my brother. My brother went ahead and got like one of those Mr. Homebrew kits that my sister bought him for Christmas, and the beer came out terrible. So then it was one of those things, well, I could brew better beer than you. And basically we ended up doing our first couple beers together. I ended up moving to San Antonio to take a promotion with a job. And in that process, having like a car accident, took the insurance money that I was given, bought a new brewing set, and basically started going to work on the home brewing aspect. So from there, brewed for a couple of years until I was confident. I can tell you the pivotal point from when I started taking it more seriously, and it was a conversation that I was listening to that Annie Johnson was having on the Brewing Network, and it was when she had won Home Brewer of the Year. And previously, I had almost stopped brewing because, like, the few batches that I had done when I moved, I wasn't really too happy with. So it was like, at this point, I'm just wasting money. Like, let's try a new hobby. But then my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, was like, no, like, you spent all that money on that equipment, you're brewing. So listen to the conversation, and was inspired by Annie being, the first black person to win the Home Brewer of the Year, first woman. to win Home Brewer of the Year, and then for an American Light Lager at that, it had brought a lot of motivation to what I wanted to achieve. So from there, even implemented some of the processes she did, like I stopped drinking during brew days, and literally the next beer that I brewed after listening to that podcast was the first good beer I had ever brewed, and it was a robust porter.
Wow.
So once I got confident into brewing, I started bringing my beer to local bars, local tap rooms, stuff like that, letting them sample my beer. In the process of doing that, I ended up getting a part-time job as an assistant brewer for another local brewery, from bringing in my beer constantly to where they had finally hired me. And then worked there for a year, kind of learned more so what not to do. Met my business partner through that venture. We used to actually go out, drink and stuff like that, have a couple of beers at a local place called Missions that's no longer open. And when I ended up leaving the other brewery, I was like, Mike, when are we going to open a brewery? I've been waiting for you to ask me that. And probably 24, 48 hours later, we started working on the initiative.
Wow.
I mean, the brewery, excuse me. So, started working on the brewery. That was a process of about a year and a few months of work. And then we opened November 16th, 2016.
Wow. So what's your focus at Weathered Souls? What kind of beers do you like to brew?
We're kind of all across the board. I mean, we're more so known for our stouts and more fun beers. But we do everything from, we have an American Light Lager, a Vienna Lager on tap, German Pilsner, all the way to, your 14% ABV pastry stouts. So we're pretty much across the board in the type of beers that we produce here.
And how is San Antonio as far as being a beer city?
It's growing. You figure San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the U.S., and we have, I think, 18 breweries. A lot of those have opened up within the last 2-3 years. So San Antonio is definitely still growing and has a lot of room for growth.
Now, several years ago, I was at a homebrew conference, and Michael Ferguson, who was then director of operations for BJ's, introduced himself as the other black brewer, and referring to Garrett Oliver of Brooklyn Brewing, and everybody laughed.
Yeah.
But, in a way it wasn't that funny because, craft beer and our hobby has had challenges in diversity over time. Is it getting better?
Michael Ferguson is a really good mentor of mine. I call him my OG. Same thing for Garrett Oliver. That's one of the OGs. So when he made that statement, it was very much true. It was probably literally just then. At this point, it has grown, but in very small margins. I mean, you look at, ownership in brewing, and there's over 8,000 breweries in the United States, and it's less than 1% that are owned by black people or people of color. It's grown a little tiny bit, but it definitely has a long ways to go.
And do you have any inclination, or do you want to, have an opinion on why that is?
It's actually a multitude of things as to why the brewing industry is the way it is. A lot of it has to do when craft brewing first got its emergence. Back then in the late 70s, 80s, it was very difficult for people of color to achieve small business loans, loans in general, to get real estate. That was all the way back from then, but then you also look at the current industry and the state of the industry, and there's very little marketing to people of color, very little advertisement to people of color. The industry is predominantly Caucasian, and so there's that mindset that it's not a welcoming experience. Now, we know different. I know different based off of my own experiences, but I've spoken to many of people of color that have had negative experiences going to breweries or tap rooms, from being looked at oddly to assuming they don't know anything about beer, so on and so forth. As far as the actual brewing aspect of it, it has a lot of lines to do with who's in the industry. So you automatically assume that it's not that inclusive because there's not a lot of marketing or, conversation driven to people of color for the actual process of brewing. So those would just be a few of the issues as to why. But like I said, as more people get into the industry and they see other individuals being successful, it's going to start driving more people of color to want to join in, more black people to want to join in and join the industry. But then there's also the line that most of the time these individuals don't have experience, and so they end up getting in line to more of the front of house type situations, and so you don't see too many black people or people of color on the actual brew floors or in the production area. There are some breweries that try to highlight that and hire people of color. I've seen that at like J. Wakefield in Florida. I know Hired Hands has programs where they do internships for black people of color, things like that. So as time goes, I think it's going to grow and we're going to see more of a shift. But we definitely have a very, very long way to go until we get there.
I mentioned Garrett Oliver. He announced on Twitter a few days ago the formation of the Michael Jackson Foundation for Brewing and Distilling, named after Michael Jackson, the famous beer writer. And do you know about that program? I've got a couple of notes on some scholarships.
I just read on what he initially posted. I had already offered out my assistance with it, so I'm sure Garrett will end up contacting me when it's time to get to business. But I mean, things like that is what's going to drive more people of color to get into the industry and, kind of drive it further to being more of a demographic setting.
He announced the Sir Jeff Palmer, if I can read my writing, scholarship for brewing, and the Nathan Green scholarship for distilling. And apparently Nathan Green was the original distiller for Jack Daniels. Is that right?
So he was the actual person that created the Jack Daniels recipe, and that is what the Uncle Nearest distillery in Tennessee is a ode to his legacy.
Now let's let's talk about your project, and this thing is blowing up. The Black is Beautiful Imperial Stout, and I bottled mine with the help of my wife a couple days ago. And I looked at your website, and you've got almost 1,000 breweries brewing this beer. So I want to get into the weeds on the beer, but talk about the project. Where did this come from, and where is it going?
Yeah, so the project originally started as me wanting to give back to my community to participate some way in the cause of what's been going on with the recent murders, the lack of respect for people of color, and the situations going on along those lines. So originally I was going to brew a stout, release it within the tap room. In the course of having a conversation with Jeff from Jester King, he had suggested that I turned it into a collaboration. And I was like, you know what, it's a wonderful idea, Jeff. So I kind of reshift focus. Spent the next 24 hours coming up with the mission statement, coming up with the initiative. So what the initiative is a call to breweries. Originally, it's supposed to be the United States into the craft beer industry. But it's grown so much beyond that. I mean, we have big beer brands involved. There's a lot of Anheuser-Busch brands involved. I just seen that there was a Vietnam brewery that just got involved, a brewery from the Philippines. Just got signed up, and I think we're in 18 or 19 countries at this point, so it's gone worldwide. And it's a call to arms for all these breweries to participate in this collaboration of the Stout to bring the attention of the lack of inclusion and the lack of equality that's been going around in America at this time. And then we ask that these breweries donate 100% of the proceeds from the Stout that they brew to local charities, entities, foundations that support legal fees and police brutality reform. And so, yeah, and then the third goal is to your long-term focus. So we don't want the message to get lost just once the beer is gone. You know, the beer is only one aspect of it. So we want that message to continue to grow. We want the conversation to continue to grow, the dialogue to continue to grow. So it's what you're going to do after that beer is gone, after you release that beer, to make change within your own brewery and your own community.
Are there personal stories in your background that kind of make this more of a focus for you?
I've had a few experiences with the police. From me and a relative saving someone's life and being treated like suspects and criminals, when we were actually just, took a random person to the hospital and saved their life, all the way to being, profiled for having a nice vehicle when I was like 17, 18. I had a nice Mustang with decals and rims, and, all the fun stuff. And so we used to get pulled over all the time because we lived in a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood. So, there's different aspects of my life that has definitely guided me to have a personal feeling towards this initiative and what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I've had people email me asking me to kind of speak out on this issue on the podcast. And I think, if there's anything that the world doesn't need, it's another 55-year-old white guy from the South talking about this issue. So I'm glad to have you on the show, to help, make that kind of bridge and to get your personal experience rather than me ranting about something that I don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, dealing with a lot of the things that have shifted in America, and I know a lot of people are like, keep my politics out of beer and, that type of situation. But we look at this and it's not about politics in the slightest. This is a humanity issue. This has been going around for hundreds upon hundreds of years. Like, the systematic racism that has been embedded into the United States isn't a myth, it's not a theory, it's a literal known fact that you can actually Google and bring up documents to your government from different things that they've done to basically defranchise the Black community. And you look at things from Jim Crow to why police were even created, to why the prison system was created. And it's been all of these things that have driven, the situation to where it is now. So the best thing that I can suggest for anyone who is not a person of color, who's not Black or a person of color, is to listen, to create dialogue and listen. Don't rebuttal, don't give the whats and, what about and different things like that. I mean, you even look at Black on Black crime, you figure that's the only race where it is labeled that. We don't hear about white on white crime, Asian on Asian crime, Mexican on Mexican crime, or anything like that. And why do you think that is? That was a term that was coined by one of the past presidents. Even looking at the murders in Chicago, why there's a majority of ghettos and why Black people live there. There's reasons for all of these situations, and there's answers that people can literally Google instead of assuming and just not wanting to listen to what we've been saying for years upon years. And to be honest, people of color and Black people are fed up, and so that's why you're starting to see a lot of people start trying to make changes. A lot of people, basically even dealing with the protests. I mean, you can only take so much of a situation. You look at the way that has been driven, and then people would have more of an understanding why we feel the way that we feel at this point in time.
But it's more than just about awareness. There's a financial component as well, and where is the money from your Black is Beautiful beer going to?
Yeah, so we're actually going to be splitting it up. Originally, we were going to donate our funds to the Know Your Right camp. But as the the focus of the initiative has grown so much, and us calling on breweries to donate locally, I thought it was important for us to do the same. So a majority of the money will actually be going to the 100 Black Men of San Antonio, and then we'll be making a donation to the Know Your Rights camp as well.
And you've given the flexibility for breweries across around the world to choose their own places. I mean, there's some guidance that you have, but they have the flexibility to choose their own charities.
Yeah, and the reason behind that is, well, one, I didn't want to control everybody's money or be responsible for it. But two, was also because I thought it was important for these breweries to give back locally. These are the people that are in your face every day in your own backyard, the people that can interact with you, the people that you can learn from in your own community. So I thought it was very important for them to be able to give back locally than, to one charity. And then there's so many breweries involved. I mean, you figure we're almost at 1,000. Why not spread the love as much as we can?
Now let's talk about the beer. Let's talk about something I do know something about, and I've been brewing for a little while, and I've brewed this beer. And we have to give kudos to Annie Johnson for converting this into the homebrew scale. But let's kind of go over the recipe, and if you like, and kind of talk about the components and why they're in there and what they bring to the beer. Let's talk about the malt bill first. 10 pounds of pale malt, 2 pounds of oats flaked, 1 pound of chocolate malt, 12 ounces of flaked barley, 12 ounces of Crystal 120, 12 ounces of roasted barley, 8 ounces of chocolate rye malt, and 4 ounces of black patent malt. So go through there and kind of dissect that. Where do all these ingredients come from, and what are they doing in the beer?
Yeah, so obviously, pale malt, the base malt that we typically use when it comes for the stouts that we produce. I mean, there's a lot of people that shift off to different base malts that they want to use, and that's fine. There's no specific reason behind the two-row that we typically use. That's just what I've been accustomed to since homebrewing. As far as, the other ingredients, you look at the flaked oats. Flaked oats obviously contribute to the body of the beer, which is important for stouts. You don't want a thin base stout in the slightest. Chocolate malt, I'm a huge fan of the chocolate characteristic within stout. I think a majority of that type of characteristic should be the main forefront. So obviously that's why there's the chocolate, and then also the chocolate rye. You get a little touch of that spice character within the stout. Originally, this is supposed to be more of the traditional American style stout, not in the pastry end of the slightest. So you want a lot more of those traditional flavors to be prevalent. Same thing with the Crystal 120 to give that nice deep caramel, coffee characteristic to the beer. Let's see what else was in there. Roasted barley. Me, personally, I don't tend to use too much roasted barley in my beer because it gives off that smoky aspect to it. For 10 to 12 barrel batch, I typically only throw a handful in. But more traditionally, I think that's why Amy went ahead and threw the roasted barley in there. Black patent, we like the deep, dark black Edgersole stouts here. So we typically use a heavy load of black patent, and in which I removed, that's partially why I removed the roasted barley out of there as well. Let's see, what else did she throw in there? I want to say that should have been covered about all of them. Dextrose is more so to increase some of that body, and then increase the ABV a little bit through the boil. Since I know dealing with most home brewers, they're limited to the capacity of their mash tuns and tanks.
Yeah, I didn't say, but 1 pound of corn sugar. Now I screwed up, and I didn't get my corn sugar or dextrose at the homebrew shop, so I used table sugar instead. But the beer turned out good, so it may be.
I was about to say the table sugar would dry it out a little bit more. If you're not using a lot, you should be fine. Typically, I try to stay away from table sugar just because sometimes it can lend some astringency depending on how much you're adding.
And then hopping is, strictly American in the recipe. 1 ounce of CTZ hops, either Columbus, Tomahawk, or Zeus, for 60 minutes for bittering, and then 2 ounces of Cascade at 20 minutes, and then 2 ounces of Cascade at 10 minutes. And then a California ale yeast.
Yeah, so more traditional American stout. So that's why I wanted to use the Cascade, give more of those traditional flavors within it. Just a nice backbone of a slight bitterness to it, but not anything that's over abrasive for the style.
Yeah, like I said, my wife helped me bottle our batch a couple days ago, and we really enjoyed the hydrometer sample, so it's a good indication.
Oh, good then. I'm glad it came out good then.
And then I was able to hit the stats, the original gravity 1081 and final gravity 1016 for an ABV of 8.7%. But you also you encourage people to do variants as well, and in fact you've done some variants too.
Yes. So I mean, the stout that we created is basically an open canvas. It could be easily altered to present different aspects to it. So if you wanted to turn it into a pastry stout, I mean, just increase your mash temp and add a little maltodextrin and a little candy syrup in the boil. If you want to add adjuncts to it, it's very versatile for adjuncts and different things like that as well.
Yeah, I mean this beer, would go well with coffee or chocolate or wood. Go well aged on some oak, maybe some bourbon in there too.
Exactly.
You could go a million different ways with that.
Yeah, and I'm actually about to fill up some barrels right now. Some 8-year Willet store pick.
Wow. And I looked at your menu online, and you've got quite a selection of dark beers. What is your key to success in brewing delicious dark beers?
My key to success, I would say, is probably balance. What we've tried to do within the lines of stout, even going into barrel aging and adjunct treatment, has always been about balance. So, if we list that there's specific ingredients within the stout, you want to be able to enjoy every single one of them. So if there's 3, 4, 5 ingredients, you can differentiate what's in what, that type of thing. Versus, some you have all these ingredients and then you can only differentiate 1 or 2. But the main thing has been trying to create balance within our stout recipe where you're able to achieve some of these characteristics. So you get the dark fruit and the caramel toffee aspect. You get the super dark chocolate aspect to it. So I think that's pretty much where we found success in producing our stout bases and even going into some of our additional treatments and stuff like that.
Is it easy with this style to get kind of muddy if you try to do too much?
Yes. So it definitely can, doing too much. Now, as far as your grain bill goes, sometimes we get fancy. I have a stout base that we use for barrels that has, I think, 5 different specialty malts in it. I think about 5 different specialty malts. But being said that, again, it's about balance. So you need to create that recipe to where you're balancing out those malts to where your gravity is still finishing low enough. You're achieving the flavors that you want within the actual malt profile within itself.
Well, I'm looking forward to bottle conditioning this beer. I haven't been bottling a lot except for small experimental batches lately, but I wanted this beer to last, and typically things on tap at my house, they tend to go a little more quickly than if I were to, squirrel away some bottles in the basement and let them age a little bit, So I'm looking forward to seeing how this ages out over time.
Yeah, I'm excited to see a lot of how some of these recipes develop and what people are doing. The stout itself should age pretty well, especially at the homebrew level, dealing with the malt characters and the hopping that was done with it. So once I actually bottle conditions and settles, I would even say that's probably going to be really good within a few months to even a year.
Awesome. Well, Marcus, this has been fun. Congratulations on the success so far of your project.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and thank you for participating in the initiative yourself and checking out the recipe.
Thanks again to Marcus. You can find out more about the Black is Beautiful beer and project at blackisbeautiful.beer and find the homebrew recipe at homebrewersassociation.org. And I've since tasted my version, and it is complex, delicious, and yes, beautiful. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. And thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help from Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. Talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well, stay tuned. So long.